Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the eBuilder Update. We are here with Tom Rosenkilde, Senior Project Manager. Tom, thanks for joining us today.
Good morning, Paul. It's good to be here.
So just to start, to jump in, can you just tell us a little bit about your role in IP&O?
Sure. As you mentioned, I'm a Senior Project Manager in the Project Services Group led by Shai Patel. So my focus is on capital projects, so that would be any new building out of the ground or any major renovation of an existing building. Typically, a change of use is also involved in those cases. Any project in our group actually starts in another group in planning, development, and design, who does the initial feasibility and programming studies for the project. And then as they move into schematic design, that's where I kind of am brought in mostly as an observer and to get familiar with the project and start offering construction expertise where it's applicable. And usually it's at the completion of schematic design, there's a pause where the project budget and schedule are developed. And that's where I work closely with PD&D to develop those. And if the project is then chosen to go ahead to proceed, that's where I become sort of the primary project manager for the project. So, the next step is then design development, construction documents. During these phases, I'll work closely with other Rutgers groups in IP&O, such as utilities or public safety, to make sure that the project meets all of their standards and requirements. Obviously, I oversee the bidding of the project and awarding it to a general contractor, and then taking it through construction and closeout.
So I know now that IP&O is going through kind of a shift where we're changing to eBuilder. Mm-hmm. And I know that you just recently went through the training program for eBuilder.
Right.
Can you talk to us a little bit about your experience through that training program?
Oh, sure. So the program was very well done, very interesting. It took place over 4 days in January, live in-person sessions, half days. I think it was supposed to be 5 days, but we had a snow day in one, so they had to kind of compress it a bit. The class was led by Sue Bouillon, and she and her MyPath team did a great job kind of creating this presentation, creating this class. It was interesting because it was actually it was a pilot training program, so it wasn't specific to my role. It was we got to see an overview of all the roles, from project managers to the accounting group to senior management, et cetera. So we kind of saw, we got an overview of the whole program. Sue and her colleagues, Jesse and Liz, kind of took turns presenting the material. And it was good because also Marlon Hidalgo, who is sort of the person who was implementing the software, was also present for the training session. So if we had any technical questions, Marlon was right there to answer our questions. So Sue and her team walked us through the 10 processes that are part of the system, and it was great because we didn't just receive information. There was a lot of back and forth, opportunities for asking questions, and actually taking the system for a test drive. So, we actually went in and tried it out, and we took turns. It was all very, very interesting, very informative.
After going through the training, how do you think that eBuilder will improve you and your group's workflow?
Obviously I haven't actually used it yet, so I'm thinking out loud here, but I did see some real improvements when I went through the training. One of the things I saw was that, right now I mentioned how there's a transition in project management from PD&D to project services at the conclusion of schematic design. And, it's always difficult getting into a project that's already underway and kind of catching up with what's been done. And I think with eBuilder, that will become a little more seamless. Especially in terms of financial information. So when I come into the project, it's already started, I'll have better access to the financial information, what's been spent, who's been hired, what's been done, what's been paid, what's not been paid. Right now, that information is there in AIM. It's available, but it's a little, it's a little harder to understand. I think eBuilder will definitely simplify that. Another advantage that I see is that the eBuilder is built around a system of 10 processes, and we pretty much use the same processes now, but it's a lot more ad hoc. You kind of have to rely on your own notes, your own spreadsheets, your own history of what you've done before. In eBuilder, that'll become a little better organized, or rather, I should say, much better organized, especially with respect to the PBA, the project budget analysis. Like I said before, at the conclusion of schematic, we typically take a pause and develop the project budget. And there's a lot of back and forth between different groups on that, where you're getting cost estimates from other Rutgers groups. You're working with the end user, you're working with the PD&D. And it's right now that's all done through email, which works, but it's a little messy. In eBuilder, there's sort of a centralized place where that information will be developed and recorded, which I think is a huge improvement. So another place where I think eBuilder is going to help us a lot is during the design review process. As I mentioned before, during the development of the construction documents, we meet with other Rutgers groups such as OIT or utilities to ensure that the details of the project meet their standards. Right now, again, that process is somewhat ad hoc. We try to make it organized and coherent, but again, a lot of the record keeping is somewhat scattered. With eBuilder, again, that record keeping becomes centralized. There's a place where you can see not only what someone's comments are, but if they had no comments, it's recorded. You know that everything's fine, rather than just relying on memory or an email that's been filed somewhere. And last but not least, one of the things I really liked about eBuilder is the purchase order process is going to become more simplified. Right now, there's a lot of paperwork involved. Again, with eBuilder, there's a central place in the system where you can process any purchase order you need for the architects, for the engineers, for the contractors, for changes to the contract, and also for the 1,000 miscellaneous vendors that end up being involved in any project.
Okay, great. And then last question is, what advice would you have for people who are about to go through the eBuilder training process?
Well, like any new software that you're learning, it's a little overwhelming at first. And I think when you're just receiving the information, learning for the first time, it's probably overwhelming and hard to get all of it. But I think it's one of these things where you learn by doing. You start using it, and using it's more and more intuitive.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Tom, for coming on the show and for sharing all that with us. And thanks, everyone, for listening. And tune in next time for more information about eBuilder.